Hi everyone, and welcome to How Good's Footy in Asia, AFL Asia's official podcast. I'm your co-host Matty Gale in Osaka, Japan. It gives me great pleasure to welcome my co-host Billy Bang Bang Crang over there in Hanoi, Vietnam. How's things over your way, Bill?
Saigon, mate. You could call it the capital of Vietnam. Saigon, actually. It's where things get done.
Sorry, did I say in the capital?
No, yeah, you did. But this is the capital. It's a bit like calling Canberra the capital. Sorry, Keezy.
Yeah, actually, but those that are former presidents of Vietnam Swans will beg to differ. There hasn't been many successful.
They live in capitals. Capitals are great for people who don't get much done.
Good place to hide, you reckon?
Yeah, just hide behind some red tape.
Yeah, brilliant. Bill, the weather's sensational here in Osaka. If anyone's
wow.
in Japan during cherry blossom season or hanami party season, as they call it here in Japan, magnificent. And it's amazing that we're on the 30th of March and the Japanese financial year, the Japanese school year, finishes on the 31st. They don't give themselves much of a breather because they're back out there for the new financial year on April the 1st. So we've got some people that will change from one school on the 31st to the 1st. They'll actually change to a new school. But what it brings with the Hanami season or the cherry blossom season is it's the end of one year and it's the start of a new year. And sometimes we get the cherry blossom season before the end of March, so it finishes early. My birthday is on April 6th, which is just around the corner, and it usually goes for about 10 days. And I think I'm going to get some cherry blossom action in my last year in Japan, which is pretty handy. But beautiful time of year, and a lot of people have those parties to welcome the new staff members as well. So it's an exciting time of year. Really nice.
Just on that, Matty, that's fascinating. Does that mean on Thursday, everybody will have a year-end party, and on Friday, say you were changing, you'll rock up to the new gig, ready to go again this year, given the way it falls?
Yeah, some people have the parties in this last week. Generally not. Yeah. But they can have them on April 1st.
That's relentless.
It's a Friday. They might actually be tempted to have it on the 1st of April because there's a bit of rain Monday. Is it Sunday, Monday, Tuesday? And quite often there's a heavy rain. In the past, we've had years where there's a real light cherry blossom season because the rain just knocked them out of the off the trees, and we come home pretty empty-handed as far as opportunities go to enjoy and embrace this beautiful time of year. So,
fair enough.
Yeah, we got our Osaka Dingoes one this Saturday. I haven't seen the Yosh man since about the middle of December, so hopefully get a chance to catch up with him. He's been hanging out there at Kyoto, itching it a bit to get back out to training. So, didn't get a chance to see him last week. He was a bit busy working, but the Yosh man will be up and about, as he's saying, has reached their first victory last weekend. So we'll talk more about the footy shortly.
Yep.
Bill, let's move along to our local frontier, our region-wide focus for this afternoon. We've got a really extensive one. I haven't actually given you too many notes because you'd be blown away of the amount of information I've been able to put together. But I wanted you just to purely focus on one thing. We don't want you going down too many rabbit warrens. We'll just get you to solely focus on footy in Vietnam. Now, there's the final round of the GAA AFL multi-code season in Hanoi, in the capital. And they finished up with a bit of Gaelic there, and you had your first round of the SAFL in Saigon for your first round in Saigon footy. So give us a fairly good understanding of how things panned out over the weekend for you guys at the Swannies.
Yep. So, massive weekend to have games happening in two cities in the country. Both really healthy attendances. So the GAA AFL finished with their third round of Gaelic, so that's the sixth round in total. They've played, both sports rather than any international hybrids through the season, so it gives everybody a chance to attack both sports properly without that grey area in the middle. By all reports, a very, very successful season, obviously. It got hard towards the end. Hanoi has kind of done well throughout COVID, even through our biggest lockdowns when Saigon was a basket case. Hanoi was doing better. And like it seems, Perth these days too, the better you went, when you do cop it, then it's a bit of a floodgate type thing. So they've had numbers been really tough lately and restrictions coming in and out. So initially that season was playing with like 4 standalone teams of 2 genders. So there'd be 2 games of male and 2 games of female. This final weekend they played combined. And I posted it yesterday, but I've gone blank. The Herons got done because they're the sister team of my Tigers. I'll have to have a quick look
and get the games up there in Hanoi because I did a bit of a wrap from Vietnam yesterday, and they did have the male and female separated.
But they merged.
Yeah, they merged. Yeah, but they had those two winners.
Yep. Yep, which I can get up in a second. And so that brings an end to their season. So they've had a 6-round season, 3 Gaelic, 3 AFL. This week we'll have a big update on the overall season winners. I know the Buffaloes, who are always considered the sharks of that league, they on draft night they'd have the lowest stocks every single time. But Mickey Francis has his spies around town through all his F&B venues and just so happens to hire a few guns through the year or come across a few recruits, and every single year they pull it together. I know they won I'm fairly confident they won the women's league, but I'm waiting on the final results of the men's overall league. So the Buffaloes and the Langers won both the male and female games combined, beating the Herons and the Crabs. Now, here in Saigon, we got our first game of the 2022 season underway, and it was a ripper. We had a few new girls come out, which is great for us. So Claire and I've forgotten the second girl, but 2 girls moved down from Hanoi and just added a bit of depth to the female side of our games, which is great. We're hoping to build on that and get the numbers up through this season. My Tigers combined with the Crocs and spanked the Bears and Vipers. So that was a good start to the year. We were, we were just a bit better with the ball in hand, I think. I think the other team, the Bears and Vipers, stayed in the contest all day, but they just broke down with their skills, which a couple of AFL teams probably did the same, and we'll get to those a bit later. So that was a good start to the season for us. We'll have about 9 rounds of that league, it looks like, this year. So that's round 1. It was great. We had about 30 players out. So about 13 down to 12 aside. We oscillated between quarters depending on how people were faring. It was brutally hot, incredibly hot. But great to be out there.
It's always that first game, Bill, that knocks you about.
You
haven't had many trainings under your belt, that's for sure.
Yeah, honestly, the amount of times I've said to myself, I can't believe how hot it is. And then you think back and it's like, I've been doing this for 10 years. It's always this hot. But in the moment, it dawns on you that this is ridiculous. And then you're like, oh, it's always going to be like this.
Saigon weather barely changes though, does it?
No. So we are heading into the hottest part of the year. And it's probably worth mentioning April 23rd will be our Anzac Day game down in Vung Tau again this year. And that is smack bang the hottest weekend of the year, without fail. Any teams that have toured here, that's one of the reasons we often get up against some bigger opponents, is that we run a pretty deep bench. We know what to expect. It's a hard, hot track, and it doesn't get any easier as the game goes on. And it's definitely a tough away place to play footy. It's brutal.
Could imagine. And we'll have an Anzac Day special podcast coming up in a couple of weeks. Go around the grounds and hopefully get a couple of guests on there, if possible, to talk about what's happening in their backyard.
Maybe one more bit of local news. I know you didn't want me down any rabbit holes, but we are edging towards our first international game again, which is massive for us. It could be the first in the region, at least for this year. And we'll head to Cambodia in at some stage. So they're going to feature in your round the ground stuff now, but we'll get across there for a 4-quarter international game, and that's going to be incredible.
When do they anticipate the borders opening between Cambodia and Vietnam?
We're good. We're good. So you can come now. Anybody can come to Vietnam now. You just go back through the previous visa channels, which for Australians you do need a visa on arrival, but it's a website, it's a process. There's nothing much to it. Latest advice I had was that you do a COVID test within your first 3 days in the country. I don't know how they come and find you if you don't happen to do that. But obviously it might make your exit a bit more difficult, but it's very much now relaxed. So I mentioned Hanoi is still fighting spot fires in terms of case numbers. The good thing there, like I think most areas, is the hospitals aren't seeing it. So we're edging towards a situation where if nothing goes the other way, we're pretty comfortable with the situation. We're already obviously welcoming people back. That's now pretty much open for business. So, good news there. I think Cambodia must be fairly similar because they reached out to us and now we're just trying to finalise that date. It'll be after Anzac Day, but not too far after that. And hopefully later in the year, then we get a return visit and then start booking a few other tours in. Obviously, Bali Masters, Champs, it's all looking positive.
Yeah, fantastic, Bill. Very good news. And great to see the Cannonballs back on the agenda between the Lions and the Cambodian Eagles. We'll get to the Eagles shortly, but just one more thing about Vietnam. I'm not sure if you've read it or seen the pictures in your network, Bill, but there was a heap of Auskick shirts donated by the AFL that have been circulated through the Swannies and going out into some of the orphanages and some of the communities of need. So that's brilliant news, and we'll cover that later in the week on.
Watch this space. That's going to bring some incredible stuff about.
Yeah, we've got that on our platforms to come later in the week. Let's move along to the Bali Geckos. They had their first official training last Wednesday, although they've been training unofficially. It was their first official one to launch the season. Bali Masters is gaining a lot of momentum. We knew, I think about 10 days ago, they had 22 or 24 registered teams, and they're asking for more. So if you're interested in getting your team, not only within AFL Asia, but internationally, particularly in Australia, June long weekend, jump on board and contact the Bali Geckos and watch this space as to whether they have another domestic competition. It'll be interesting to see where that is going to go, because it was quite successful last year. They had 4 teams, I think. Now, moving on to the Beijing Bombers, it wasn't that long ago we're talking about them having a kick and a catch in the snow, but they began their official training for the year, regular training on March 19th. They've got a planned Anzac Day event, and I'd be interested to see if Keezy's online, if he could tell us when was the last time the PAFL was played. So the Beijing AFL is back, and there's more details to come. I can't remember it actually ever happening on my watch since I've been involved with an AFL Asia leadership. In 2017. The glory old days when Keezy around would be probably one of the last times, but even since they've got the gang back together during the pandemic, I don't think they've actually played any PAFL games as such. Also on the 7th of March, they got a joint Gaelic football and Aussie football day that they'll have 2 quarters of each, half of each code, which is good. Go to the Cambodian Eagles, brilliant and fantastic to see them with their new Auskick footies on the weekend with the non-pen Auskick, who are absolutely booming at the moment. Big numbers out there. Good pathway program for the future of Cambodian senior football. They had a St. Paddy's Day of Gaelic football this is going to be pretty hard to pronounce, with the Khmer GAA club. Real vibrant feeling around the Cambodian Eagles camp, and plenty of locals out and about on the training track, Bill. They had 30 out of 33 on their training track were locals back on March the 9th, and they've got some really creative interactive videos that have been produced at the moment, which are terrific as well. Bill, just a quick one on that. The importance of, we saw in the background, but without really building on what was happening in the background with the clubs in our region and the Gaelic clubs. Just describe really quickly, how important has the relationships between our AFL Asia clubs and their Gaelic brothers and sister clubs, how important have those clubs been during the pandemic?
Well, yeah, it's massive. So the Swans, it's been pre-pandemic, going all the way back to getting the women's AFL started. You can directly draw a line from our sister club relationship in Saigon here with the Gales to getting that Saigon Champs women's exhibition game happening. And from there, everybody went home. The seeds were sown. And we had mixed leagues in our kind of off season at that stage where Gales players would jump in. We've always had a great representation of a few Irish guys being some of our best on-field contributors, but more so off-field. They bring a lot off the field. And then I think it was really highlighted that's always been there for us. The Gales are especially strong at the moment because there's great work opportunities for young Gaelic, Irish people, in this country. So it's a great gap year for them, and the gap year often turns into closer to a gap decade. Then in Hanoi, it was really sort of hammered home how important it was when we were able to build our female numbers stronger than the male numbers. And I think that was very much by getting the two codes together. And then when we wanted to get it on the park, we were able to build that GAA AFL, which just doubles the scope instantly of what you're doing. And you'll have phases where, the Irish at the moment have a strong connection to Vietnam and working travel here. And then there'll be phases where that might not, for some, another country might pop up that somehow attracts that market. And then the AFL might be stronger for a period, but both can float off each other. And the pandemic became a time when everybody just had to float, find a way to float. So yeah, just having that relationship, I think it's you can see it even through to the AFL. The Irish stories are incredible. The connections are really strong, and it just gives us another support mechanism to just ensure that we're bulletproof to anything, and we always come back stronger from any adversity.
Yeah, very true. Footy's come a long way since the Jim Steins experience in the early 80s.
Yeah.
In our own backyard, you had Niall, who won. Might have been close to the Division 2 player of the tournament. If not, he should have been. Singapore, playing her first tournament. She got the MVP, I think, of the whole AFL Women's Asian Champs.
Yep.
And Malaysia, I think they had a pretty strong balance of Gaelic footballers in their team when they won, and also Vietnam when you won the inaugural AFLW Asian Champs in 18. Sorry. So it's
just quickly. It was Claire and Norma who came down from Hanoi for our first round of the SAFL last week, and it's another example. We're hoping that their injection of enthusiasm can help us get our AFLW program right up and about, because they've just come out of the Hanoi stuff that's been going great guns. So it's just interesting how that crossover can bring the energy across, and we're hoping, again, launch another really strong scene down here that had kind of faded over time.
Yeah.
Claire and Norma. I forgot one of their names before, and it just came back to me as you were speaking.
Yeah, magnificent here. We'll move along to the Guangzhou Scorpions. They had plenty of numbers on the training track, and they were meant to play round 2 of their Guangdong AFL season 2 weeks ago. And I know there's been a number of infections in particular areas, mainly south of in southern China. So I'm pretty sure they must hit. Talking about southern China, part of the southern China AFL unit and the league here is the Hong Kong Dragons, and they still not much light at the end of the tunnel, still out with restrictions. On a positive note, last week there was an announcement where flights have recommenced with 9 different countries. So that's a positive, and hopefully that's a step in the right direction. We'll move along further south to Jakarta. Stack of numbers on the training track. They had a scratch match consisting of 20 players per side not long ago, and that was just amazing. The Bintangs visited their orphanage, the Mama Siang orphanage, on March 16th and ran a training session there and delivered a generous donation from their major sponsor, Trade Indie. So big ticks there. And a huge amount of local players and a stack of female players there. And as we've probably mentioned on our podcast before, we really hope that they can get an Asian champs team together in the women's division. So that'd be magnificent if they can do that. Across to Japan, where I'm based, we're fortunate enough. All the clubs across Japan were allowed to train for the first time last weekend, which is brilliant. Given we've been sitting ducks, I think the last game or any training was the last Saturday before Christmas, which was the AFL Japan A-League Grand Final between the Century Powers and the Komazawa Magpies, with the Komazawa Magpies winning that in the all-Japanese university battle to see who win the premiership and their first flag. Over in Osaka, we're currently trying to organise an Anzac Day tournament. It's been pretty difficult to get any traction at the moment, given that teams have only been able to train once. So we might have 2 or 3 teams, but they'd be probably mixed. We look like we've got pretty steady numbers here, which is terrific to see. We had 3 new Aussie guys and a new Japanese guy join us last Sunday, so it's pretty promising. Over to Malaysia, there's been a big bounce and a big comeback from the Malaysian Warriors, particularly this year alone. So they've got their 30th year anniversary season launch coming up this Friday night. They held an AFL Nines tournament back on March 19th. Plenty of steady numbers on the training track and rebounding strongly ahead of a big year for their club. Just getting a message from Troy Luff as we speak, wondering how things are going on our AFL Asia page. We'll get back to you soon, Luffy. We've got bigger fish to fry this Savo, unfortunately. Over in AFL Pakistan, they had a very fruitful meeting with our AFL International Development Manager, Simon Highfield, I think, within the last 2 weeks. It's been really good. I think it's probably been the strongest our relationship has ever been with AFL Pakistan. And those that know the background information, it's been a different country to deal with, but it's really positive. We've got some real concrete discussions and a really strong relationship with them. So that's been really good. Philippines. Now, this has been our other big news item out of Asia. This Saturday, the first PAFL game, the first Philippines AFL game between the Eurekas and the Dingoes will be held this Saturday, and it's their first in over 2 years. One thing they've been doing is delivering their Auskick led by Colin Crooks in conjunction with their senior teams training, and this has been a really fruitful investment and just generating the whole atmosphere of club, family, juniors, seniors, all in one. And hopefully that is able to attract some female footballers moving forward. And just talking to club legend Edgy yesterday, Michael Edge, they're actually struggling to find some footy posts because the place they used to play their games is actually they've moved their gear and they don't know where it's gone, and so they're playing a new location. So that's first world problems right there. Find goal.
Been there a few times. Yeah. Have you got our goalpost? No. Have you? Where's that guy gone? I haven't heard of him. Especially Japan, after a few years.
In Japan, we use the Auskick goalpost, I think. So
I'll
bring out the PVC pipes and try and turn them into goalposts as well. We'll go to the footy tips a little bit later on in the podcast, Bill, but just on the PNG Rooks, looking pretty good in the AFL Asia footy tips and currently second on the leadership board.
No.
But they tipped a few roughies that got up, I saw last weekend, so that's fool's gold for me. Over to Singapore. Singapore got Singapore Sharks, which is their junior program, one of the biggest programs of junior development Auskick in Asia and in the world. Registrations have opened for the 2022 season and commenced on March 23rd, and footy will officially be back on Sunday, April 24th. To the Wombats, the Fit Bats kicked off on February 27th and will wind up this Sunday with their final testing and weigh-in. Benny Adams is looking remarkably fit for the Wombats, and our word on the street is that Sanchez is struggling to get out of Warren. Sri Lanka, we don't really talk much or hear much about Sri Lanka, given most of their contingents based in Melbourne. They had a huge injection of footies delivered a couple of weeks ago, so looking forward to them covering a little bit more about that on their socials if they can. And the Thailand Tigers held their first round of their domestic season, which was dedicated to the memory of their club sponsor, Gary Simon. Excellent numbers at Auskick women's and men's level, so it's exciting developments happening over there. They're training at a new location tonight and hosting their 17th annual Anzac Day match on April 23rd at Cambodia. So that's a huge wrap from around the region, Bill. Plenty going on. Amazing to have this much footy back, which we took for granted pre-pandemic, and now just absolutely loving it. So it's brilliant to have footy back in such a big way, and looking forward to getting Indochina back and Asian champs down the track. And we've already locked away the Bali Masters. So they're really exciting times ahead. Bill, I'm going to throw it over to you. We've both started to really get into the analysis of footy in the 2022 AFL season. You've been a bit lagging with your analysis at times, but you've actually gone about some round two takes that you've 3 takes from round two. From round two. What have you got?
Yeah. So firstly, Matty, well done on that around the grounds. I think we've all noticed the the news picking up, and you see snippets. Wow, Philippines. We know how dire that lockdown was, and then when it comes out. But it's great, the detail that you're able to hold it all together. So well done, mate. To hear all that in one spot, I think it's really uplifting, and I think we should cut that into a short video that we post back on the socials in the coming weeks. So that's something we can chat about. Really, really great to hear all that in one place. So fantastic. And so secondly, the analysis. I was called out last week as well for not having my tips ready by someone watching us live. And I'd like to say that I did have my tips. I'm just not very confident on them. So your 3 takes last week, I'm not sure if I was actually invited to even prepare 3 takes, but this week, after getting that stinging criticism, I thought I'd jump on board regardless. So my 3 takes from round 2, the first one is the given. Probably a bit predictable to go with it straight off the bat, but how could you not? Buddy's 1,000. I've personally never seen anything like it. I had seen, the run-ons for 100 and a couple of the thousands previously, and some of Plugger's old incredible moments at the SCG, but this was just on another level. I think people were well aware that this isn't going to happen again, and you could hear a bit of the nanny state undercurrent, that if it does happen again, those nanny voices, they get louder and louder as things go. So it probably won't happen this raw ever again. But to watch Buddy, especially in that first 5 minutes, revel in that moment, it was just magical. It was absolutely something else. And for me, to see Swans players walk out and try to find their way to the rooms going around the field rather than through the field, because that was just a waste of time, I still think it's magical. People are pointing to that as sketchy. Give me that any day of the week. I haven't seen the AFL that human. And the other thing I found interesting was that the Sydney cut through. I know the AFL talks about numbers being incredible, kids playing footy in New South Wales. They're turning the tide, and they have definitely created 2 successful franchises in Sydney. But this was something else. NRL media had to stop and say, did you see, Buddy, this was as good as it gets. So congratulations for the AFL for definitely letting it happen. Congratulations for the security guards for not doing their job in any way, shape or form. They probably could have been within 10 metres of him just to keep an eye on things, but decided not to. It was as good as it gets, and definitely for me, the number 1 takeaway from that round. Well done to Buddy too, because the amount of points he's kicked, the amount of roles he's played where kicking goals hasn't been exactly what he's done, and the amount of value he's brought to the sport, it just can't be overstated. Sydney, I heard the CEO say that their club is twice as big in terms of members and revenue since he came. Now, there's been organic growth in that time, but he has just kept them on the front foot that whole time in a market where they're not the first sport. So for me, that's the number 1 take, and just blew me away. What a big moment it was. My other 2 takes are a little bit more, controversial possibly, but I've gone for curtains and for too soon. I'll get to them one by one. Curtains for Port, I'm almost ready to call it. And it's not how how poor they were on Saturday. It's just the fact that you take one or two pillars out of their system and it falls over that badly. So the pillars that I think are crucifying them at the moment is Dixon up front, obviously, and Alia down back. So not only the Hawks were able to... I didn't watch that game because the D's were playing at the same time, with their premiership defence missing, I might add. And just to see the numbers afterwards and to think, how did they just get done by 10 goals? And to have a look at the numbers and go, no, they didn't get done in any facet of the game. And yet to go down that badly, it's got to be alarming. We'll probably see a rebound this week against the Crows, and we'll talk about that in the tips. But for me, the fact that it was just able to come undone, this is on the back of a preliminary final no-show at home. I'm ready to call curtains on them. And the other one that I think is on the edge of curtains, if not already off the edge in free fall, is the Bombers. And this weekend is their, pun intended, D-Day. So they play Melbourne. They're going to try and come out swinging, which they did against the Lions. And once again, they just seem to be... They're able to drum up plenty of possessions and chip it around to themselves. And when it all works, they're all happy with themselves. But as soon as Lachie Neale started putting the shoe on the other foot, they seem to fall away again. And now they're playing Melbourne. They've got McGrath out. So that was their real bright spot from last week. So I don't know where they go. Obviously, they could turn it around and we sit here next week and say, I was an idiot. But if they don't, then 3-0. And that could be it. And then the other take I've got is too soon. So I'm not ready to write the Dogs off yet, but I'm almost ready to say perhaps, and I said this a little bit last year when I felt like their best three players were wearing yellow for a couple of games towards the end of that run through the finals. Obviously, they were dominant in their prelim final, but against Essendon, I felt like they were scratchy and got a ton of... any Essendon fan will tell you how that game went. Now, if they don't have Norton this weekend versus the Swans, we'll find out a lot. So it's too soon for me to say that they're a write-off, but I think perhaps they weren't the clear number 2 team in the league last year, and we might come to recognise that. They might still be a finals team, but they might not be on that cutting edge, which maybe the Lions and maybe even the Blues are coming up to. But that's my other too soon is the... It's not the Teague train anymore, but the Voss train, the Blues train. It's going flat out at the moment. Everybody's on board. I'm going to still say it's a little bit too soon, and I want to see them maintain it. Both the games that they've won, they have had patches where they really gave the opposition a good look at the 4 points. And you could argue that Richmond should have found a way to get that 4 points, and the Doggies even didn't convert, despite not being that convincing in my books. So I'm not ready to say Carlton are top 2 or 3 teams yet, but they're definitely an improver. So too soon on the Blues, too soon to write off the Doggies, curtains for Port and Essendon unless something dramatic happens. And Buddy, the number 1 take.
All right, thanks, Bill. Some great information and insights and opinions there. I'll give a few more just stat-based. So my 3 takes. Since 2010, there's been 60 teams that have been 0-2, and only 8 teams have gone on to play finals out of those 60. So Western Bulldogs are in that stat line now. I don't think they can make top 4 if they lose this week. So they lose this week. It's a big turnaround. So they got the Swans this Friday. Was it this Thursday? I've got to check. I know they've got them this week, but the week after they got Richmond. So they could effectively be 0-4.
Yeah.
And then even if they're 0-3, I think they can still make finals. But if they're 0-4,
It's tough.
It's a long way back. They can still make finals, but top 4 is slowly falling away. And they only need another key injury or 2, and then they could be completely shot. If you lose Bontempelli or McRae, English has been probably one of the best ruckmen in the league this year. So if they lose one of those 2, it could go either way real quick. Yep. Just done to my second take. The Sydney Swans are probably they're definitely a top 4 lock for me, and they're one of the most exciting teams. But one of the key reasons is their list demographic.
Yeah.
So against the Cats, they had 11 players that were 23 years or under, including 2 23-year-old players that played against the Cats. Now, I didn't go back and have a look at how many over 30 players at Geelong played in that game, but we all know they had 13 and one team last year. So I know only a couple of those have retired, but yeah, it's just exciting for their side, their team. The youngsters are taking on the leadership positions, and you've got Heaney playing the best footy of his career. A lot of people saying too soon with him, as well as being that top line, top 5 player in the league. But his trajectory's heading that way really quickly. So if he can have an injury-free year, you could see Petrarca-like year from Heaney. With a bit more forward midfield balance rather than Petrarca midfield forward balance.
Yep.
I think he was at in the midfield 34% of centre bounces and 43% midfield time. So that's a good balance for him. All right. Now, you spoke on Buddy extensively. I'm going to speak more statistics. So I've got some who's kicked 1,000 goals, 10 goal bags plus, so more than 10 goals in a game, and 100 goal plus seasons. So the top 6, which Buddies are now the only become the 6th player to kick more than 1,000 VFL, AFL goals. Plugger leads that particular list. So he's got 22 10 goal plus hauls and 5 over 100 goal seasons. Dunstall actually could have got just as many goals as Plugger over his career, but Plugger played 3 or 4 more seasons, and Jason Dunstall fractured his skull, I think, in 1997 or 98.
That's right, yeah.
When he became captain of the club. So it actually rocked him at a critical stage of his career. But Dunstall had 16 10-goal bags and kicked over 100 goals on 6 occasions. So he's actually the record holder for the most 100-goal seasons. But given he played in those premiership sides throughout the 80s and 90s, early 90s, it's not too, and they just shared the Colemans, those guys. I talked about a guy who actually won a Coleman in his first year, the Horse Longmire. I think he kicked 89 goals or 90 goals in the 1990 season on debut as a 19-year-old. Anyway, back to my list. Gary Ablett Sr., 12 10-goal hauls, and he must have kicked a heap of them in 94, 95 because it's absolutely on fire. Managed 3 100-plus seasons, and he was huge, particularly in the back end of his career. So he kicked a lot of goals as a midfielder. So his figures are a little bit more skew if compared to the other guys that played for forward their whole career. Good in Coventry. Obviously got one of the ends at the Marvel Stadium now named in his honour. 10 goal bags of plus and 4 100-goal seasons. Doug Wade, he rounds out our top 5 before we mentioned Buddy. 4 10-goal hauls and 2 100-goal plus seasons. Now, Buddy only kicked 10 twice, and one of those was down in Tasmania. I think he kicked 13 because I remember Hutto screaming, 13. So we all know Buddy kicked 100 goals in one season. He kicked 113 goals, and mind you, 88 behinds in 2008. He's played 320 games, Bill, and only held goalless on 27 occasions in his career.
Wow.
So there's some pretty significant figures. There's 2 more players, AFL, VFL history, before I embark on something completely different. John Coleman, the Coleman medalist, obviously it's the medal's named after him. He kicked 12, just listen to these, 12 goals on debut, but career was crucially cut short by injury at the age of 25. Retired with 537 goals from 98 games. 5 seasons that he completely played in full, 3 100-goal seasons, and the other season was 97. He kicked 42 goals from his last 6 games of his career and averaged 5.5 goals throughout his career. He also kicked 12 10-goal bags. And Matty Lloyd, I was really disappointed as a person who's followed Essendon, particularly from the 84-85 premierships as a 6-year-old and a 7-year-old. 270 games, 926 goals, 3 bags of 10 goals plus and 200 goals. So it's pretty disappointing that Matthew Knights came in and basically said, you can pack your bags, son, your career's effectively over. And I think it was on the back. I think he got suspended on the last game of his career. He ran through someone against Hawthorn, and he got a fairly lengthy suspension, but he actually, that was pretty much it for Lloydie. But the other one that doesn't get enough mention is Sticks Kernahan. I think Sticks kicked 700 and something goals for Carlton. I think he was the captain in their first year he ever played for Carlton.
Yeah.
And he also kicked 298 goals for Glenelg in the SANFL. So we talk about VFL, AFL history. He's a guy that's never going to get recognised as kicking 1,000 goals. But he's kicked 1,000 between his SANFL and his AFL career. And Sticks Kernahan, I don't think he moved to Carlton until he was 23. So he'd already played in a couple of flags for Glenelg. He played a lot of state footy for South Australia, and he was one of the top 5 players when I was growing up before he moved over to Carlton and famously sang that song after a premiership with Carlton. Now I'm gonna get the trumpet out, Bill. I'm going to ask you, how many 10-goal hauls?
Wait a second. Before we go to AFL Asia, which I think we are, everybody said last weekend just gone, this is the last time we ever see this happen. I just want to consider one thing. Now, in my mind, there's daylight second. Oh, it's pretty harsh on Tom Hawkins, but he obviously shares the forward 50 with another big name spearhead. There's daylight second in terms of a forward who means everything to his team. And what would it take for Harry Mackay to get to 1,000? I just did some quick numbers. He's played 5 years, but two of those years, games played, he had 13 games. His first year, only 2 games. So he's had two 20-game seasons. Last season was actually 19. Now, he's kicked 129 goals, so he's miles off 1,000. It's a bit crazy to be even considering it. But what would he have to do to get to 1,000 from here? Last year, he kicked 60, so he would need about 15 more years. So he'd have to play 20 years to get to 1,000 at that rate. But if he ups his average to 70, so maybe he gets 100 one year, or I don't know if this is possible in the modern game, but could he do it, Matty, as a forward? Is it actually impossible, or could someone like Mackay do it if he stays on the park?
He'd have to kick at least 4 goals a game, I reckon, for the rest of his career, and he'd still be short.
Well, if he averaged 70, he needs 12 and a half years from here. So he'd have to play for 17 and a half years. He's played 5, so he'd need to go for 12 and a half more years.
He need a good luck.
Last year he averaged 60.
With injuries.
He needs Carlton to go deep in finals too.
Well, he needs them to go deep in finals for the next decade. And
is that not happening?
A year or two of your career, you slide down a little bit.
Yeah. Anyway,
their career on a good note. I know that much. I know. Heard he was one of the only players that's finished their career with the best and fairest in the final year of their career, and that's saying something about him. So not everyone gets to write their own fairy tale story.
Yeah, Hawkins is doing it now. So he's the model. I mean, if you gave his assists and goals in his career, it'd be a massive, massive number. But he's playing as good a footy as he's ever played. So there's little signs that you can go deep in a career playing good footy. Now, Mackay could do his, it's so, like you said, Dunstall missed a year or two. If he gets that, then there's no chance at all. I just wondered whether it is actually possible that someone comes along and does turn back the clock and do it again.
Yeah, players are playing more football, but slow down, and the reliance on one key forward.
That's right. Yeah,
is getting less and less. So the way I always saw it, I needed to kick at least 25% of my team's score, and you'd probably want 20, but some games you're kicking 50% of your team's score or even more. So I'm actually going to go into. I'm going to ask you first.
Yep.
Have you ever kicked a 10-goal bag in your life? Any age? Any level?
Of course not.
How many do you reckon I've kicked?
10-goal bags?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. I can't even. I'm sure you're about to tell us.
I'm going to give you a heads up. Yeah, I'm going to get the trumpet out and the
go for it.
Everyone else. Now I've kicked 11. I kicked 12 goals as a 17-year-old. Mind you, that was out of 48. 14, 7, and 2 on the full one day. Another bag of 10 in the same season in 2001, which included 5 in the last quarter, playing in the pivot in the centre. And I kicked 10 goals on 2 occasions in 2009 and a leading goal kicker year. But most of mine were kicked for the Saka Dingoes in the 2013 season. So 104 goals in 9 games. Had 8-6 in a trial. Tokyo Goannas 10 goals 3. Eastern Hawks 9 goals 5. The Nagoya Redbacks defunct footy club 13 goals 4. Tokyo Bay Suns 3 goals 2. We only kicked 5 that day and got pantsed by about 80 points. The Lions, which is Mitch Toa's team, 11 straight. Senchu Powers, the 3rd best team in the league that year, 20 goals 3 out of 24 on a outfield of a baseball field.
Yep.
Comes our Magpies, 15 goals 3. In the semi-final, 14 goals 5. And in the grand final, Gary Ablett stole 9 goals 2 in a losing side that went down by about 25 points. So that's a total of 104 goals 27 with an accuracy of 79.3%. They jump off the page, Bill. They jump off the page. The trumpet's going back in the suitcase, but we'll just wanted to.
How many did you kick that night? I was feeding you. My 1 and only game for the Dingoes. Yeah.
In the last quarter, only because you were playing in the ruck and feeding them down.
Yeah.
All the straights. But mind you, we played 9-a-side over here.
Yeah.
We're playing on, the AstroTurf, and it's only the size of a soccer pitch or a rugby pitch. So perfect for big left footers that can thump them, Bill, because you can kick it from the halfway. But I was absolutely, before we go into round 2 in a little bit more detail, I was absolutely gutted. That I had to work last Friday night, so I was sort of hoping that Buddy wouldn't get the 4. I had a 2-hour Panasonic lesson, and I was absolutely gutted, given he's my favourite player. But
just on that note, I watched the game at the office, and he had 1 goal in I think it might have been late first quarter. I had my phone on the desk with the Watch AFL up, but not really, still working. And at about 5, I thought, you know what, I'm going to pull up stumps here anyway. It was and I had the radio on then as I drove home, and not much to write home about in the second quarter, but in the third, I think he got 2, and they just started. I mean, obviously everything started buzzing, and so I got home just in time, put the TV on, and that's why I think to watch that live, and so you could see the encroachment, and I'm thinking, Buddy's kicked more points than anyone as well as goals, and there's people not waiting at the boundary line or anything. They were 5 meters behind him by the time he kicked it. And so I'm just thinking, what no one's got this. There was no contingency, right? If that shot misses, which it's got every right to miss, they're the ones he misses. He doesn't miss, 55-meter arcing shots at goal. But in my head, I'm just like this. And then obviously they got super lucky on the whole thing. The way it all played out could not have been more magical. Anyway, enough about that.
There was 2, I don't know whether it was Tony Lockett's last 100. It wasn't his 1,000, or it was Gary Ablett's 100. Anyway, they said that he missed his shot on goal to kick his 100. Get everyone back off the field and do it again. I think it might have been down at Kennedy Park. But, I'm glad it didn't happen. But he kicked 4 straight. He hasn't been the greatest kick on goal. I think he's kicked 700-odd points as well. Out of the 100, so he's not the most accurate, but geez, he's the most exciting one we've ever seen. I think Gary as well.
His celebrations after, especially that first goal, like I said, I had the phone sitting there at the desk. There was something about it. You could sort of see, hang on, this isn't just someone playing this low key. It's happening tonight at the SCG. You could just see a little bit. His first goal, he stands to the crowd and goes the full Hulk, and it was just this isn't business as usual tonight.
I did have one of our former Osaka Dingo players who actually moved back to Sydney, and he was at the ground and saw a grew.
Yeah.
He just had, the lady that had her grandmother's.
Jesus Christ.
Wow. There's a guy that I think manages something to do with the Sydney Swans. He's one of the most influential administrators. He's sitting there with a picnic basket out on the ground with his wife and his family. A couple of the players ended up outside of the ground, just a male that had left the ground and couldn't get back in. So, I was just listening to Dangerfield this morning talking about, should they have finished the game? And the game's, there's so much riding on it integrity-wise that he would have been happy if they'd called the rest of the game off, because they'd been off the ground for 45 minutes and they had to finish the game. So still had 6 minutes odd on the clock. But, Bill, over to you. You've played, as you tell me, you've kept most of the biggest and best AFL Asia full forwards at bay, and you've kept them goalless. Who are some of the best players you've played on, or some of the best goal kickers you've seen in Asia? Any goal kicking hauls you can remember off the top of your head?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one, because in the last few years, in my first few years playing for the Swans, I didn't really have any. I just sort of did whatever. But over time, I sort of got pushed in one direction, and it wasn't the scoring end. And so once I found myself down at that last line, you think, okay, what am I going to do to help our team win a few games? And so one of the things I've always looked for is that gun forward. I think it happened actually. One we were playing Cambodia on Anzac Day at Vung Tau, and I was actually playing somewhere else, maybe halfback or something like that. And Cambodia had a guy called Nick, who was an absolute gun forward, and he might have kicked a couple first quarter, and we should win that game going into it at Vung Tau. Like I said before, it's a tough place for a team to come and beat us. But they just looked a bit dangerous, and I got pushed back to him. And I love having just that job, and typically I've been able to do it, I want to say. There's been a couple that I couldn't, so they're my first and foremost the full forwards that I'd have to take my hat off to, and that's Berkey from Hong Kong in his heyday. And this was a combo of him just being an absolute jet on a lead, and the second half of that was that their midfield were incredible ball users at the time. So he'd get a step on you, and you're not coming back from that, and you just know where that footy's going to end up. And whereas some of the other midfields maybe don't deliver it like that over and over. So playing on him was a nightmare. I think Manila Cup one year, which is short Asian Champs style games, he kicked 3 or 4, could have even been 5. He got the goal kicking award for that day on me, and I was hopeless just watching it unfold, standing on the mark, turning around. Yep, he never missed either. So him, and there was another Jakarta Bintang's full forward who he was a golfer as well. I think that was his day job in Jakarta while he was there. They came to Saigon for a tour one year, and he well and truly got hold of me. I remember that, and just being embarrassed. But some of those other guys, the best forwards that I played on that I think I fared better on was obviously Nick from Cambodia. He kicked a stupid amount of goals one time in the Indochina Cup in Hanoi. I'd love to go back and find those numbers. It might have been something like 15 goals in 4 games, but 2 of those games were against the Swans, and I don't think he scored a goal. So he just absolutely teed off on poor old Laos and Thailand. But I was really chuffed that, because I really do sort of focus on those guys, able to shut him out. And there was one other gun forward that I had top of mind, and it's gone. It'll come back to me.
Yeah, and the best I've seen in Asia, just have a think about it. Best one I reckon was Luke Jericho, Hong Kong Dragons.
Yep, who I never played on.
2013 Asian Champs.
Yep.
Obliterated it. Had pretty good, fair bit of feed coming through the midfield, but yeah, he was obviously played for the Crows and Nord, so he'd actually played at a pretty high level. But yeah, he's the best I've seen. Can you think of his name before he moves on to round 3, Bill? No,
but there's been a couple for the Swans who I've been lucky enough to get us to quite a few good results. And the 2 that really come to mind was Big Keezy and obviously Oscar the Grouch in recent years. So they had a few bags. I've asked them both earlier today about their biggest bags just to have them ready to go. And Keezy told me that he kicked 5 on Anzac Day. I remember that day versus the Bintangs where we actually lost. And we were trying to feed him in the last quarter just to get us over the line, but just couldn't quite make it happen. And he was also, I still remember him standing, you'll like this, it's right up your alley, but standing at halftime in the Manila Cup final when we were about 3 goals down. And obviously, chips were kind of down. These are short games, hard to turn around. We're playing the Philippines at home. They were up and about. Sparks tearing us a new one. And the coach, Andy G, basically just told us, relax, relax, relax. Effectively, he was saying, there's not much we can do about this. Let's at least not go down, screaming at each other. So he's going zen. And Keezy's like, nah, what the hell is going on here? Why is everyone not kicking it to me? And so basically, every time we got the ball in the second half, you'd hear our talk, our chirp. He was right. It was, why were we kicking it to anyone else at that stage? We only had one 7-foot, 120-kilo bloke who could kick him from anywhere. So we just started putting it on his head, and all you could hear was kick it to Keezy, kick it to Keezy. So you'd pick up the ball, and it wasn't, like, you're hot. It was just kick it to Keezy, and he got us over the line, the big fella. He also made a prediction about today's pod that I found fascinating, saying, in reference to your good self, he's not going to talk about all his goals versus short Japanese blokes on mini soccer pitches again, is he? So he saw that one coming, and he nailed it. He also mentioned that Carl, sorry if I get this wrong, Malakanukas kicked a massive 7 or 8 for the Beijing Bombers versus Shanghai in the first ever China Cup held in Beijing in 2007. So thanks, Keezy, for some gem insights, and he hit the nail on the head. And the Grouch kicked 8 once versus Cambodia for us. For the trivia buffs, a game that we actually lost at home. So he got off the chain, but Cambodia got the job done and got the win that day. He also kicked 10 in his last game, which was an internal game, North versus South. But he was just a great radar sort of player. If he gets the ball, he's probably going to hurt you.
Yeah, Oscar the Grouch could have done some serious damage at Div 1 level. I know he's played a lot of Div 2 at Asian Champs, but he was above and beyond the level of Division 2.
Yep.
Bill, we're going to get to round 3. We'll whip through the tips pretty quickly because we're 57 minutes in body.
Wow.
Thursday night, Western Bulldogs backs against the wall. Still ahead on the open market, but
massively, yeah.
Yeah, I think the Swatties can take a big scalp here. The Western Bulldogs, they showed a lot more promise in the second half last weekend, but yeah, I don't know. If Norton's out, put a line through the Bulldogs this week because they just haven't got enough goal kickers. But for me, Sydney too strong. A lot of momentum coming out of the Harbour City, and I'm going to tip the Swatties. What about yourself?
Yeah, I'll follow you in on that one. I saw the odds and I was a bit surprised because that Friday night, that last week's game by the Swans was very, very impressive. They're just so efficient with the footy. And the Dogs did turn the look of that game around against Carlton, but they just couldn't get it done when it counted, and can't see them doing it for 4 quarters against Sydney.
Friday night, the reigning premiers Melbourne take on a slippery, sloping Essendon Keezy's team. Zach Merritt's out for 2 or 3 months. Things aren't looking very good. He's their best midfielder. I know Parrish is all polish, and he had a pretty good game last weekend too. But, yeah, Draper's been really good in the ruck for the Bombers. And Gawn's been a little bit disappointing, but Jackson seems to be having a bit more of a sharehold of the rucking duties. For me, can't go past the D's, and they'll do it pretty easily, I think. Friday night footy at the home of football.
I'll tip the D's. I'll never be confident. I don't know how many years of this type of form they'll need to show before I'll actually rest easy before a Melbourne game. Because even last year, they still lose a few that they shouldn't. But I worry for Essendon. I really do.
I think it's good night, Irene, and And if they get a couple more injuries, they could end up being bottom four.
I feel like their next couple are tough too. It's not just Melbourne. I think they've got a few other tough games behind it.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure, but if it is,
they can still turn it around, but they've got a long way back. I think the other week I noticed 4 out of their 5 leading goal kickers from last year weren't in the squad. So, like I said, they're just really lacking goal kickers. I've never seen this happen in the AFL ever. 2 games scheduled on a Friday night, so there's a showdown going against.
How hard is it?
Which is the Crows and the Power have been, calling out for this sort of fixture, but not as a stand. It's not even a standalone.
Doesn't make sense.
It's really disappointing because they should be given national audience for this type of game, even though both sides are really struggling, which no one envisaged, particularly for Port Adelaide. Port Adelaide are really down at and as probably as down as they have been anywhere of their history, particularly with the predictions for a top 4 finish or definitely finals bound, been wiped off the canvas in the last 2 encounters, and particularly at home last week. That was really disappointing against Hawthorn. Russell Ebert tribute game, one of the favourite sons and considered God by the local faithful there. To go down as convincingly as they did was really, really disappointing, and they just didn't give a wimp. The Crows, on the other hand, they were poleaxed by a really polished and really good-looking Collingwood young developing team. They look really, really good. Lots of good, exciting young players, and they're up and about, the Pies, and they haven't had much competition to play against, being both bottom 4 teams, but they were really good. But, yeah, Crows, they'll get Rory Laird back for his first game, coming back from a broken hand. No one's really interested in this game, and it's probably one of the most disappointing and less anticipated showdowns, even though it's a Friday night fixture. Port Adelaide hopefully show a really good count of themselves, but the Crows, I'm not expecting too much from them. Port by 7 goals, Bill, you?
Yeah, Port will hit back, that's for sure, and they'll have gone to school on where they fell down last week. It wasn't like they didn't have the foot. They had every stat over the Hawks, and they just didn't put it on the scoreboard. But these showdowns, they're always ripping games somehow, some way. So, I don't know. But I'm definitely tipping Port. And I do think it's a disgraceful piece of scheduling. Every week, the NRL, if you look at their scheduling, I don't watch their Friday night footy, but they are a 1 time zone league, and they easily play 2 Friday night footy games because Friday night's your TV time to shine. So for the AFL to not get this done, I know a lot of people in Melbourne were saying, oh, you just have a Perth game. You don't just go and see what they do because they're doing it in 1 time zone. It's not hard to just, I cannot believe, that they've managed to run over the top of themselves. And the excuse, it's the AFLW final, that's no excuse. Like, you've had how long to prepare for this? Incredible.
Yeah, well, we won't talk about that particular fixture any longer, but that's why there's the twilight fixture between the GWS and the Gold Coast. Now, I don't have their track record. We know that the GWS have been pretty strong against the Suns, and the Suns have hardly given a yelp against their other baby brother. But Gold Coast have been pretty good so far this year. But in the same time, GWS, they're just chipping, hold the ball up style. That's 2020, 2021 football, and it's played by middle-of-the-road teams. That's what the Crows have been doing. You've really got to press hard and run powerfully with the footy through the corridor if you can, while the defenders are off guard. So I think GWS, if they can tinker with their game style, they should do this pretty easily. But the Gold Coast Sun, I wouldn't be shocked if they go to Sydney and actually knock them off at Giant Stadium. But I'm going to tip GWS, but with no major conviction, Bill. Both teams. GWS 0-2 and Gold Coast with their good win over against West Coast in round 1. Yourself?
Thank God you went for the Giants, because you sounded like you were talking yourself into an upset. Yeah. And I'm tipping the upset. I'm on 10. We'll have a look at the leaderboard in the AFL Asia tipping at the end of this, but I'm already chasing Hail Marys. And I don't actually think this is such a Hail Mary. I watched Gold Coast play Melbourne last week, and they were very, very competitive. They didn't go forward with great conviction. So I don't know if Rankin's back this week, but that'd help them. But I also watched the Giants because I watched the boxing with a friend, and the Giants-Tigers game came on straight away, and so we sat and watched it, and it was horrible to watch. A very undermanned Richmond, and to see the way the Giants went about that. Obviously, they're going to try and address it and open the game up a bit. Things really amiss in that. Doesn't bode well for Leon Cameron, doesn't bode well for them as a footy team, given the talent on their list. And I think the Suns are up and about. Rowell had a flat game against Melbourne, but Viney put a bit of work into him, and that's never nice. He won't get that this week against those Giants, I don't think. And Touk Miller's an absolute superstar of the league. So I'm tipping the Suns. Peg one back, hopefully, on the leaders.
Okay, let's move along to
the
Saturday night clash at the MCG between Collingwood and Geelong. Like we said earlier, Collingwood have been pretty impressive so far this year. The Cats, in Buddy's 1,000th goal game, they weren't too far off the mark, but the Swans are really on top of their game last Friday night. And yeah, expect the Cats to make a good comeback this week, and I'm suggesting they'll probably win by 5 or 6. Collingwood will be competitive for at least 2 quarters. Not sure which quarters they'll be, but I think the Cats have got too much across the ground and across the field and should do it easily, but not in a canter, what you would have expected at the start of the season. Bill?
Yeah, I thought the Cats were really disappointing last week, actually, and Collingwood continued to impress. So I wouldn't put it past them, but I'm not willing to jump out on that one. So I'm tipping the Cats.
Okay, up in the Gabba, the second Saturday night game, I expect the Brisbane Lions.
So they overlap too, 2 nights in a row.
Yeah, well, there's always a Saturday night. There's always
which in itself is amazing. But wow,
yeah,
okay.
The shouldn't really allow for that. But that's always
amazing.
Always a Saturday night game in Melbourne, one in an interstate.
Yep.
I expect the Brisbane Lions to kick a cricket score over North Melbourne.
Yep.
North Melbourne played against the Waffle representative team last week. Had included five top-up players, and there was 5 top-up players in COVID protocol. So they were scratching the bottom of the barrel for a team, and North Melbourne just snuck over the line by 15 points, and West Coast could have won it. They kicked 2 goals 5 in the last quarter. But yeah, Brisbane did what they needed to do. They didn't really come out overly strong in their fixture against Essendon last week, but their last 3 quarters were pretty amazing. And Lachie Neale amassing 41 disposals and 2 goals too. He's back in brown medal contention form like he was in 2020. And yeah, they got winners all over the field. I think there's been question marks about Joe Danaher being a complete player, and he's really just taken it on his shoulders this year, and he's looking like a different player. He's already people forget before his injuries that he had for 2 or 3 seasons there, he was an All-Australian. So he could really bounce back to that sort of form throughout this year. So easily cricket score by Brisbane. Bill?
Yeah, by a mile. Yeah, I don't need to everything you said there. Lachie Neale looked incredible last week. And yeah, North Melbourne, they were playing in the corner when we were watching the Giants Tigers, and yeah, to watch them fail to put away the Waffle squad was a bit alarming. The same as they should have been ready for Hawthorn round 1. You know, they've got 1 more year to be this team. So I've got big questions about David Noble and whether he's actually got a clue in that position. So I don't know where they're heading. Massive win to the Lions. What do they stand for? The Roos? I'm not sure.
I'm not prepared to put anything out there like that about Northland. I think David Noble's the man for the job, and just where their list is at, more importantly.
Okay, let's see. Give that 3 years and see how it ages.
Oh, I don't think the list is going to get any better. It takes a while to rejuvenate a list, and David Noble, he's been in that position as the operations manager at the Brisbane Lions, so he knows he's in for the long haul. Now, let's move along to Carlton and Hawthorn. Those that are still on buyer beware with Carlton. I'm going to throw this out there. They've got a really soft draw, and they'll be 7-1. Yes, that's right. 7-1 by round 8.
Who's the one?
Hawthorn have been really good, and they'll push them here. But Carlton, this is a potential top 4. And I had these guys wooden spoon. This is an emerging side, Hawthorn, and Mitch Lewis again clunked a heap of marks. But yeah, Carlton's the real deal. I'm not suggesting they're going to do it easily, but yeah, this is just another box they need to tick, and they'll go about it as a professional unit and get it done, and another game under their belt where they're heading towards that potential 7-1 record.
Who's the one in that 7-1?
Well, I think it might have been the Bulldogs. I think they looked at it.
Yeah, so
preview to round. Yeah, after they won last Thursday, they were previewing on the Friday. They thought that Port was still a top 4 team, so it may have even been Port.
I've had a look. Yeah, I've had a look, and I didn't really see a loss on the horizon for them. But yeah, I definitely think Carlton are really right on track. Whether they're premiership contention yet, I've seen some funny screenshots because obviously the Melbourne, it's reaching fever pitch already, but there's some things like Carlton are 15-1 for the flag in 2022, which means if you bet $50 on them, you lose $50. But I'm tipping them this week. I think Hawthorn will put a good account for themselves, but Carlton have got some serious firepower, especially through the middle, especially up forward. Expect them to and I think for Carlton, if they can really build 4-quarter efforts, which this game would be a perfect chance to do, and that'll be that thing whether they really are a top shelf contender or just a top 8, the Essendon of previous years. Play a final. Thanks for coming. So
Okay.
if they can start building 4-quarter efforts, they're going to be really interesting.
Okay, the middle game for the Sunday clash is between St Kilda and Richmond. Fremantle didn't really give much in the second half. I think they long drought in between goals, and St Kilda got a fair bit of momentum and really started to get the structures right. Jack Higgins bounced back after not heading that goal off to Gresham in round 1 and actually kicked 4. So he made a statement himself, which was terrific for him to see. But he comes up against his old side in Richmond in this game at Marvel Stadium. Now, Richmond, people weren't expecting too much after their loss to Carlton in round 1, but they actually played really well against the GWS last Sunday. This game is split right down the middle on the top, which I find a bit surprising, but I think Richmond will be too strong. I think you'll find St Kilda is going to be one of those nightmare teams to tip for and against and to follow, and you're on a roller coaster if you barrack for them. So I'm going to tip Richmond 5 or 6 snags, Bill.
Yeah, I'm going to tip the Tigers too, not 5 or 6, 1 or 2. Only because I just can't. I can't get any faith in the Saints. Sorry, Josh. Even last weekend, I feel like Freo nearly gave that to them. Freo just went away from the contest. That's the Saints didn't. Often when you see a momentum shift, like the Bulldogs D's game, it's all about the other team standing up and grabbing that momentum and just playing out of their skins. And this wasn't that. This was Freo. I don't know whether they tried to sit on them, which they might have done the week before against Adelaide too. So it wasn't inspiring stuff for me. But it was a good win nonetheless. And Richmond is still obviously, with Dusty in the balance, it's hard to know where Richmond sit. But I'll back their effort this weekend more than I'll back St Kilda's. Wouldn't be surprised if the Saints actually win. I think the odds are right. It's $1.90 a piece.
Yeah, I'm not convinced with St Kilda.
Tough.
Yeah. They're going to be my bogey team this year.
Yep.
Okay, the last and final game for round 3 is at the Optus Stadium, and it's the derby between the West Coast Eagles and Freo. West Coast, as we saw last year, whenever there was a tower to throw, they'll throw it in. But they gave a pretty good effort last Sunday against North Melbourne, and North Melbourne should have made a bigger fist of it. But to West Coast credit, they actually gave a good account of themselves. Having said that, no one really deserves to win or lose this game. I'd like to think it could be a draw, but I'm going to tip Freo. Again, no conviction, but yeah, they've been pretty disappointing. They should have done a lot better last week. But Freo.
Yeah, I don't know. The McGovern, is it McGovern, the Premier of WA? McGowan, not McGovern. McGowan, that's the centre half back. No, so the McGowan rules, are they the same as the rest of the country? Is it 1 week and then you're back? So obviously, West Coast ins will be quite a sight this week, if that's the case. And their ins last week, before it all obviously went to God knows what, their ins were pretty handy. It was Shuey and a couple of others, and then 7 or 8 came out. So if they get all those COVID players back, I wouldn't be surprised if they could push Freo. Saying that, I'm still tipping Freo because West Coast it's some serious turmoil that they've had to deal with. I don't typically mind seeing them suffer, but I've felt sorry for them the last couple of weeks. This has just been a joke, beyond a joke.
Sorry, Jack Ahern, I don't agree. I like inflict a bit of pain on West Coast.
This is a bit much. Well, yeah, and they handled it so well last weekend.
Oh, they did. And
chin up, took it.
Yeah, credit to them. They've done a magnificent job with 14 players out last week. Was never seen it before, but likely to see it again this season. And I guess it poses the question. We talked a little bit earlier about the integrity of the game. Should the game have gone ahead? Should they put it somewhere in the bye fixturing? Maybe they weren't on the same side of the byes. But also, what happens in round 22 or round 23 when the season's really on the line? Where's integrity again then? So it's a moving beast, and one that, as long as you can get players out there, you're going to play. I think, as we've seen with the AFLW, if it's finals, it'll be a different story. But during the season proper, I think they'll have to follow suit for the whole season. But interesting times ahead, Bill. Interesting times.
Well, what happened in the NFL season was interesting. First half of the season was a bit like this, and people were saying, this can't go on. What's going to happen in the playoffs? Now, the NFL is a bigger and bolder organisation than any other sporting league on earth, and they really find ways to get things done. But I watched those playoffs it was a great season this year, and the positives just stopped coming. Now, you can read into that what you will, but basically, if you don't test, you don't find. I just wonder whether at some stage they go, you know what, we're not gaining much. Victoria can't keep stopping people from playing because they met somebody who had COVID when you've been having 20,000 cases a day so hopefully the rules change a bit before that end of the season. Whether the Eagles game should have gone ahead or not, it's such a grey area, and I actually agree with the AFL on if you draw a line in the sand and cancel that game, you've got the same issue coming up in a couple of weeks, and then you've only got one bye in your season. It gets really hard. You're trying to keep last Saturday in September as your grand final. They've shown that they really want to keep the pre-finals bye. So if you start changing now in round 2, where does it end? So let's see how it goes. But in the NFL, it was very clear that they stopped looking, so to speak, and then they stopped having a problem.
Yeah, I think the protocol's a bit different here, Bill, but we won't go into too much more details. It's been great having everyone on board. Do you want to
have a quick look at the standings going into round 3 of
let's
the
just have a look
tipping?
at those tips. So Timmy Pickett from the Vietnam Swans, we've got 2 in the top 3 this morning.
Hopefully
Big
the footies
Rooster.
are in the mail.
Well, if the Big Rooster wins, who's he going to donate the footies to? Singapore, Vietnam, his current location. He's been involved with just about every other club in the league. We got the PNG Marooks there in second place. I'm not sure about Oracle 7. Brycey, the former captain of the Bali Geckos, in 5th spot. Will Sandman, is he still in?
Yeah, no, he's Vietnam.
Yeah, he's
100%.
formerly the Hong Kong
100%.
Dragons.
It's another Swan.
Don't know the Fighting Fury and the Pineapple Cruisers or A-Stock or Chris Waiting. But anyway, I'm 11, Bill. I'm 14th.
Yeah, I'm 10.
Right.
It's time to start. Time to start getting desperate already.
I wouldn't have thought so. It's only round 3. It's plenty of time to make up games. And you just got to
go for it.
tip with your head instead of your heart. I think that's the best tip I can give you. But no, been magnificent, Bill. Been a pretty thorough podcast. Looking at the clock, probably our longest ever. But we've given a fair analysis, a fair bit of insight into what's going on around the region, and there's plenty happening. And looking forward to some footy taking place, not only where you are, but where we are and around the region as the AFL family together. This is Matty Gale from Osaka, Japan, and Billy Bang Bang Crang from Saigon in Vietnam. Thanks for joining us, and looking forward to catching you again soon. Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Matty.
See you soon.